Gents, I just want to pause the episode for a moment to let you know about the Strong Men of Value Academy. You will have heard me refer to it a number of times, and I want to bring more attention to it. So this isn't just a program, it's a life-changing environment and community of men who are focused on personal and professional growth. We're looking at areas of relationships, wealth, and health, things to help you thrive and maximize your life. Imagine having bi-monthly one-on-one coaching sessions with myself, weekly group coaching calls, and an incredible brotherhood of high achievers by your side. Now we're diving into resilience, leadership, and holistic growth to not just succeed in your career, but to thrive in your health and your relationships. Your journey to greatness, it starts here. So join the movement and you can apply for the Strong Men of Value Academy. You can head to themanthatcanproject.com to find out more. James Horwill is an Australian former rugby union player who's played for the Australian national side with 61 caps to his name. He also captained the Wallabies a number of times, including the 2011 Rugby World Cup. And he played 10 seasons for the Queensland Reds, the local team here in Brizzy, and 4 seasons with English club Harlequins. Now, he captained them in the 2011 Super Rugby final, which was an incredible game to be a part of. But what I really enjoyed with our conversation today was the decision around why he wanted to move overseas and regrets that he didn't want to have. We spoke about sacrifices versus choices. Now, this was really eye-opening for myself because I know I speak a lot about making sacrifices and also, I guess, the consequences of our decisions. He broke it down to, most of us are actually just making choices. It's the people around us that make sacrifices. We spoke to committing to a career, like going all in, and also changing career. I know athletes sort of get to a point where their body can no longer keep up with it, or maybe there's someone newer or younger that forces their hand. James called time on his career himself. But there are many men out there as well who are stuck in jobs or careers that they don't like. They don't have the desire to be at anymore, but they're at the crossroads around what to do next. So there's a lot of insight there with the conversation with James today, and one that I know you will take a lot away from. So for those who are tuning in for the first time, welcome. Make sure you hit follow, or if you do get value from it, share it on your socials. And for the OGs, the gentlemen and the ladies that continue to come back, thank you so much for your support. We have seen a huge growth, which is very, very exciting over the last number of months. Now, as happened in last week, I wanted to read out a review over on Apple Podcasts. So if you do leave them, I will read them out. This one's from Shep91. Great content. It definitely makes the day at work fly by and puts me in the right headspace to move forward into a new career where I won't want the days to fly by. So thanks for dropping that one back. It's cool to see. I'll read a couple of other ones later on. But remember, gentlemen, if you're dropping by for the first time, or if you're still sitting on the fence around our Strong Men of Value Academy, it is a community of ambitious men who are wanting to improve who they are so that they can create a powerful ripple effect in all areas of their life. So if you want to find out more about that or even apply, head over to themanthatcanproject.com/strong men of value. Applications are open today, and I look forward to meeting you guys. Let's dive into today's episode. The Man That Can Project podcast, a podcast empowering career-driven men to live more fulfilling lives. We are here to challenge your beliefs, redefine success, and talk about the important stuff in a relatable way. Don't forget to subscribe and leave a review. My name's Lachlan Stuart. Let's get into it. James, thanks for coming on, mate.
Thanks for having us.
Pleasure. So for those who aren't aware of James, he's an incredible athlete and now turned businessman, family man. But you've played 61 caps had 61 caps for the Wallabies, even led the team, captained the team, which is a huge, something that all of us young Aussie blokes aspire to achieve. And then 100 plus games playing Super Rugby for the Queensland Reds. I was actually at the 2011 game. That was unbelievable, where you captained that as well. And then you played over in the UK for Harlequins.
That's correct.
The Quinnies, yep. Which was good. So, mate, how'd we get into rugby for you? Like, how was...
I guess it probably wasn't the normal way. I never used to play rugby growing up. Rugby, my family originated from Victoria, so I used to play AFL.
Oh, really?
So that was sort of my background. And I went to a school here in Brisbane Boys College.
Yep.
And they were, rugby was quite a big thing. And my body shape probably suited rugby a little bit more than it did AFL. I wasn't the leanest of kids. I was sort of quite a big.
The height was there though, definitely.
Yeah, height, but I was quite a chunky kid.
Yep.
Is probably the polite way to say it. And yeah, I guess I was always quite a big kid, and sort of that was what I was sort of convinced by my parents, probably at some points kicking and screaming to go and play rugby. I never wanted to do it. I just enjoyed playing AFL. I had a lot of friends. I'd been doing it, down at the Kenmore Bears AFL club in Kenmore. We grew up in Brookfield, so yeah, literally since I was 3, 4, I had older brothers and cousins that were playing AFL there, and that's what I wanted to. I was like, that was the fun part, and yeah, I remember even turning up to West Juniors rugby training and like sitting in the car crying and not wanting to get out because I didn't want to play.
Yeah, right.
And sort of. Parents weren't forcing me. That's probably the wrong words. But
just
they were
highly encouraging.
They were going, look, I think you'll really enjoy it. You're going to be really good at this, and I guess the foresight from them were like, yeah, the way you play. I guess the sort of kid you are, you're going to go quite well in quite a combative sport that is rugby. So, so that's how I got into it, and obviously, it just took off from there. I obviously loved it, and when you get into that school environment and sport, it just plays such a it gives you you feel included in what you're doing, and I used to play every sport I could physically get my hands on at school, and just I think that sort of mateship and camaraderie was such a great part of playing sport, and a lot of them I wasn't that good at. Rugby I happened to be quite good at, but played basketball, cricket, water polo. We even played AFL at school, and did everything I guess I could get my hands on. I think I was a pain in the ass for my parents because they always had to drop me at school early and pick me up late. It was never sort of, you weren't the 8 till 3 kid. It was sort of there at 6:30, finishing at 5:30. That was the standard 5 days a week.
It's only now you start to really appreciate how much your parents do. Like when you're a kid, you're like, I just got to be at training or pick me up late. And now when you start to get to the age where that happens, you're like, bugger. And look, I was very lucky, very supportive parents to do that. But I guess I've got 2 little girls now, and I think I am looking forward to the day that they are out playing sport. They're a bit young yet, but you do appreciate, as you're right, being a parent and the sacrifices that your parents made to sort of allow you to have fun. And at what age was it for you when you sort of realised you could have a good crack at rugby, like it could be a career for you?
Probably when I finished school. Like as I was finishing school, it was sort of, it was always something that you thought you wanted to do, but whether you actually was a reality.
Yep.
I got an invitation back then, what they used to call the Reds College, which is now like the Academy.
Yep.
Got an invitation to join that the year after I left school. And so basically that was sort of at that point I was like, you sat with your parents and were like, you're probably only going to have one crack at this. So you probably, let's give it your best shot.
Yep.
And that was in my head. It was like, I want to give this my best shot and put as much into I can. And then at the end of it, if it doesn't work, then at least you go, well, look, I gave it as big a crack as I could have. And if it didn't work out, it didn't work out. So probably not till I was, late. And when I was 17, turning 18 was probably when I thought, okay, I've got an opportunity here. Let's see if we can squeeze as much out of that opportunity to get to where we are. So that's probably realistically not till then, not till like I finished high school was when I thought I could actually give it a good crack.
And when you made that decision that you were going to give it a crack, like did you start making some pretty significant sacrifices? Because I guess when you're 17, for most of us, it's like you get introduced to beers and all that fun sort of stuff.
Yeah. Look, I find it. I never really look, and it's not till you look back and you say, sacrifices, but I sort of looked at them as choices. I had a choice to make, and my choice was to not, go out and party and train. And, your days back then were like I'd go to uni or work during the day, and then you train till 9:30 at night, and then it was just sort of rinse and repeat. And that was a choice of mine. It was my choice of mine not to go out, and I always sort of thought that it was my family that made the sacrifice, because it wasn't a choice for them. They were supporting me and making sacrifices and looking after and cooking food. Mum was cooking me dinner and, keeping dinner warm till 9:30 at night when you got home from training, that it was there, it was ready. That was a sacrifice when she'd probably rather be in bed in my mind rather than, it was a choice. I didn't have to do it. No one was holding a gun to my head. And so, look, I think there were certainly, choices that you make that were, as I said to you, I wanted to give it the best opportunity I could. And for me, it was, I didn't probably go out as much as I would have liked, didn't go to all the parties, didn't sort of, if I went, I drove, I never drank. That was just in my head. And look, saying I wasn't, didn't do it all the time, but, I probably wasn't as, I enjoyed my teens and, that even that first year of rugby where you were 18, you're playing Colts rugby. I mean, it's good fun.
Yeah.
Like it was sort of, you're playing with your most of your mates from school, and it's so I'm not sort of touting that I was some teetotaler and never touched anything, but it was, it was good fun.
Yeah.
I enjoyed it, but there were certain choices that you made that were like, look, no, I've got big important things coming up. I want to go do this. I want to do that. So, yeah, look, I think there were active choices that you made to get to that point rather than, So I think, and then that it all came back to the sort of the overall goal of like, I want to make the most of this opportunity because it might not come around again.
Definitely. And it was, so how long after that till you debuted for the Reds? Because was that 06?
Yeah, so it would have probably been about 2-3. So I got included in, so the academy, there were sort of levels of it, and each year I sort of went up the year. So the first year it was part-time, so you trained like 5 till, I think it was 6 till 9 or 5 till 8:30. I can't remember the exact times, but you trained end of day. So you had you either had a job or you did uni or both during the week. And end of day you trained, and then so the next step was sort of like a more full-time academy. You got a little bit more money, or the first bit was no money, and then you got a couple of grand for the year, I think it was, to sort of enough to keep the lights on, so to speak. It wasn't crazy, to train full time, but away from the Red Squad. And then the following year, I sort of got included in 2005 was when I got sort of signed on halfway through that year, and then played the year after. So I guess I went through the ranks of under 19s and Queensland A at that time, and I was just lucky that it sort of sequentially, I went through, in quite sort of sequential fashion. There was sort of no fast track. It was like, part-time, full-time squad playing in the first team sort of thing.
Through that, I guess, that 3-year period before debuting, was there any like injuries or moments where you doubted whether you would actually crack it, or were you just
a little bit? I hurt I had a shoulder reconstruction. Luckily, I'd signed my first contract to start the 2006 season, but I'd sort of been on this sort of rookie deal for 05, and I dislocated my shoulder in the sort of the world champs for under 21s. And so I had to come back and have a full shoulder reconstruction. So I spent my first preseason of professional full-time preseason in team rehab or rehab because I had a shoulder recon, and I only got fit for like the second trial game of that year. And then I was lucky enough to play well enough in that to then get a Guernsey for the first round of that season. So, whether I didn't believe, I don't think I did never not think that it wasn't going to happen. I mean, like I wasn't going to, like, I guess back then a shoulder reconstruction is quite a very common surgery. You'd speak to half the guys in the squad that all had one. You know what I mean? So it's sort of,
in the club.
It wasn't it wasn't strange. It was just, there was a well-worn path. It was like, okay, this is what you got to do. This is what you happen. And you speak to I had one, 3 years ago. I had one 2 years ago. So it's sort of like, from thinking back of it, it was never really thought of as this could be bad. I mean, it was obviously bad. I had first ever surgery, and they open you up, and you're in a hell of a lot of pain. But I guess the confidence that you gain, you see the guys that you're training with, and even there was another guy, I think Andrew Brown, who was a teammate of mine at uni as well, had one like a month. He was about 4 weeks or 5 or 6 weeks ahead of me. He had it just a little bit earlier, so you could see him progressing. You're like, oh, okay, well, that's gonna be my progression. And I was 20 at the time, so nothing. You heal quite quickly when you're a 20-year-old compared to when you get to 35. So that was it was quite good in that sense.
Yeah, awesome. And you debuted for the Wallabies 2 or 3 years after.
Yeah, 2007. So I went on the 06. So I went on the 2006 tour. So again, I was quite lucky. Things went quite quickly for me. So I sort of played all of the 2006 season and played literally every game. Then got called into the Wallaby squad some at the end of that season. And then there was a Australia A team that used to play. So the squad was quite big, and I was sort of in and out of the Wallaby squad but never really a chance of playing because there was a stack of locks ahead of me. But I was always sort of starting for Australia A, and again lucky to play a number of games in that and play well enough to then go on the end of season tour, which again we sort of played some midweek games but never actually played for the Wallabies. And again the following year same sort of process, but lucky to get my first test against Fiji in 2007.
What was that like?
Oh, look, it was, again, being in the squad for a period of time, you get a bit impatient because you're sort of there and you're like, oh, I can play, but you never got the opportunity. But I was lucky, it was a big occasion. It's sort of, I guess, a reward in my head for all the hard work. So all the choices that you'd made in my head was all the choices I'd made previously led to that point. Now they might have or might not have, but in my head that was like, look, what I did has got me to here. The decisions not to go out, to go to bed early, to do all this extra stuff has got me to this point, and that that was the reward in my head. And unfortunately that was my only test for the year. There was a World Cup and I didn't get selected, and there was sort of a bit of a downer after that.
Yeah. But how did you sort of deal with that? Like, did you obviously everyone would have aspirations to play a World Cup?
Yeah.
What was it like not making that squad?
Oh, look, it was very disappointing. I think it was, I still remember where I got the phone call and it was like, they ended up not taking 4 locks. They took 3 in a sort of like a hybrid back rower.
Gotcha.
So I was the 4th lock, which, I couldn't probably argue with the fact that, guys like Nathan Sharp and Dan Vickerman were ahead of me, and I was like, okay, yeah, I get that. But in my head, I was like, no, I can be better. I should be there. And look, but in the end, it was disappointment, but overall, it probably gave me an opportunity to train and do, spend some more time and I guess, burn the fire a little bit brighter in the belly to get back to that point. And, in the end, it wasn't a very successful campaign, so it was probably a good one to miss. But it was, I think it was, something that I certainly disappointed with. And it was, it certainly burnt the fire a bit brighter. That's, and you'd had a taste of it and you'd been around, you're like, it was a bit hard to take.
Yep. And did that then become the drive, obviously, to play a World Cup was the goal after that, or what?
I think it was just to play. I wanted to be a regular of the Wallabies. I'd technically been around the team for sort of 12 to 18 months and not been that, I'd not been that guy of like, he's in the starting team, he's in the first, he plays each week. And that was sort of the drive. And after that at 07 World Cup, there was sort of quite a significant shift in players. A lot of guys left, your Stephen Larkhams, your George Gregans, these sort of guys who had been, obviously superstars and greats at the game and, either moved on, retired or gone to play overseas. And there was a shift of the coach as well. So so it sort of felt like there was this big new opportunity to play and, everything had sort of gone. New coach come in. We'd brought Robbie Deans in, so the first sort of Kiwi coach to coach the Wallabies. So there was this sort of big, I don't know, it just felt like there was quite a significant shift of where it had been. You'd had these sort of mainstay guys that had been there, particularly the Gregan and Larkham, who are probably arguably 2 of the greatest players Australia have ever had, ever. And they had a big impact on the team, but, they leaving open an opportunity for a sort of a much younger generation of guys to come through and, you just wanted to secure that opportunity and make the most of it.
And did you see that as also an opportunity for leadership? Because obviously you found yourself captaining the Reds and eventually the Wallabies as well. Did you sort of have that aspiration as well? Or
I don't know if I ever look. I think I'd love the opportunity to captain the Wallabies. I'm very lucky to captain the Reds at a young age. I think I was 22 when I first got given the captaincy in 2008 when there was quite a significant shift of players. We'd had guys that had been there for a long time. Chris Latham's, David Crofts, John Rowe. These guys have been, mainstays of Queensland. And they all sort of moved on for different reasons around that time, where they overseas retiring and so forth. So there was again a shift and we had this sort of younger generation coming through and I was lucky to, I guess be there and I love captaining Queensland. It really meant a lot to me. Being I was born and raised here in Brisbane. So it sort of playing for Queensland was sort of, I've said, I almost put it on the same level as playing for your country. It had that sort of importance to me. And look, in answer to your question, did I have aspirations to captain Wallabies? I always thought I would like the opportunity, but I never sort of physically saw it out and said, I'm going to go captain the Wallabies. This is what I'm going to do. It was sort of like, I'd rather be part of a successful Wallabies team and not be captain than be,
of course.
It was just all about winning for me. And if I could help the team do that by being captain, then that's a great thing for me.
Yep. And what was it like, I guess, starting with the Reds, like from a leadership perspective, like 2011 especially was one of the greatest years of rugby to watch in Australian rugby, just with how you guys played. And from what it looked like, the outside looking in, everyone just seemed like best of mates, which is awesome to sort of watch. What did you guys do differently, I guess, in 2011 as opposed to the years prior?
Yeah, I think there was probably a little bit of what you said. We were very close as a group. I mean, still to this day, some of the guys that we played with that year, you probably sort of catch up. They're the sort of guys you catch up with that feel like nothing. You've never not been together.
That's cool.
Which is not. I think a lot of the lead in had come from that. We'd sort of a lot of the guys around that 08, 09, 10 sort of era had come in.
Yep.
So we hadn't probably had too many new guys. We'd had a few, but not sort of in for that 11 year. A lot of them had sort of come in probably 08, 09 were the key years that we'd sort of bring in a new bunch of new crop. A lot of the guys and from that group, they were a bit younger than me, but had always come in and been playing. A lot of them played together from a schoolboy level. So they were already sort of good mates and a lot of them went to the same school. I think we had like 6 or 8 guys from TSS over that sort of 08, 09, 10 year. Yeah. And that, they were already like they were all sort of best of mates already. So it's sort of, you just were able to feed off that. I certainly think that there was an understanding that we'd enjoy ourselves away from it, but when you turned up, it was time to work.
Yep.
And I think that out of any team I've been part of, that was we got the balance right. Not all the time, but we got the balance right in terms of that there was no need to pull people up.
Yep.
Of like, hey, you're not. It was sort of like, and you and the coach and I we sort of like, it was like, I don't care what you do away from here, but as long as you when it's time to train, you are ready to train.
Yep.
So it's completely, treat people like adults. Don't try and keep
baby them
like kids. It's like, we've got training on Monday morning. As long as you are fit to train or do whatever we need to do on that time, the first time you need to turn up, I genuinely don't care. As long as it's not illegal, I don't care what you do.
Free reign.
And not what you're doing, as long as it's not bringing the team into, I guess disrepute's the wrong word, but sort of, shining a bad light on the team. And that was the other thing, the team comes first. So everything you do has got to be, and that sort of fit into, as long as you're fit and ready to go to train or whatever it was, an activity, whether it was travel, it didn't matter what it was. So if we had to travel the next day, as long as you're fit and able to, you're not turning up with the plane sort of all disheveled, stinking of booze, then you do what you got to, you're an adult and we're going to treat you like one until you're not.
That's perfect. Did you ever find, obviously as the captain, I know you said you didn't have to pull people up, but were there ever like hard conversations that you had to have? And obviously being so close, did you find that sort of challenging at times?
I think all the time you have to have conversations. And whether I found it challenging, I mean, yes, but I think the support from the group was quite strong, and that, sometimes you knew you didn't actually have to talk, if that makes sense. Guys knew that like, oh shit, I've stuffed up here. Like I know, you don't have to sit there and like talk them through it and tell them how, whatever. They knew, and they were like, okay, I'm going to fix this. So I'm going to do better. I promise won't happen. All that sort of stuff. And so I think that element of it was quite easy's not the right word, but it sort of is. And I think there was an understanding of that. That's what we needed to do. And yet, look, we had a young squad. There weren't, a lot of guys, young single guys, blokes. That's what, like, you go out with all your mates, you go out, all your mates on the weekend are doing exactly what these guys would be doing, but you just had to make the right decisions. But we were quite lucky with the group that there was an understanding. And look, but I'm not going to say there wasn't hard, people stuffing up for the right and wrong reasons. But it was, it was a good time.
How do you feel you developed that leadership understanding? Because there's leaders who try to sort of fearmonger others into doing what they want, but as you sort of touched on there, you had this sort of culture there that people knew when they did wrong, and you didn't have to sort of backhand them. Yeah, and they already knew what they'd done.
Yeah, I think for me, when I started as a leader, sort of like early at 22, I sort of had this vision in my head that everyone needed to do what I did and be like me and do, the only way you're going to be successful is you got to, do what I do, do all this, be really serious. And, I admit I'm quite a serious guy when it came to football. I took it very seriously, but that was what I felt I needed to get the best out of me. I had to be quite regimented in my routine, and like I was really focused on that, where some guys don't. Some guys were like, guy like Digby Ioane, like the worst guy in the world you could try and give a routine to, because it's just not how he operates. Yep. And it took me a little while to work that out. As a leader, because it's like everyone's different, but as long as they have understanding of what the common goal is and agree to buy into it, and understanding that this is the goal. Our goal is to win, and we've got to try and build to get to that point. Everything else can sort of it's not grey, but there's a buy into that, and how people get to that point is different. Nobody's the same, and I think it took me a couple of years to sort of get a hold of that, and it was quite. With Ewan as a coach, working with him, I sort of that was one of the things I learned from him, and he was very good at treating individuals as individuals, not trying to sort of go, hey, everyone, this is what you have to do. You all got to be here. You all got to do this. Everyone's got to be doing this. It's sort of like, well, and I think that was in the way we played, because we had a lot of guys that had a lot of individual flair and talent. If you try and put them into a box, and that came in with our strategy and the way we played and how we approached the game. Was about, don't approach it all. We tried to play with a bit of flair. We had to, we encouraged you guys like Quaid and Will to do stuff off the cuff that they just saw. There was no sort of like shackles, like don't ever do that. When you're here, you must do this. It was sort of like, play what's in front of you. If you see it, take the opportunity. We just all got to react. So I think that helped feed into the way that the culture sort of worked off the field as well. Yeah,
it puts that responsibility on individuals. So if you mess up, you got to
I think we had a lot of that, and I think there was an understanding that guys, when they stuffed up, they understood that they'd done it, and not saying that no one did, but people did, but you just own it and move forward.
And did you find captaining the Reds, and as you said, you sort of put it on par with being a member of the Wallabies, but captaining then the Wallabies, did you feel different levels of sort of pressure?
Yeah, I think so. I think, the Wallaby captaining your country is a big responsibility, and now whether you give yourself more of a responsibility because you go, look, I'm representing everyone.
Yeah.
That's how you sort of look, we always used to say this is who you're representing. It's not just the people that have played in the jersey before you, not the people that are wanting to play. It's the people that watch you, that turn on the TV on a Saturday night, that come and, wear that gold jersey down the street. They're the people that you're representing. So you need to make sure that you've doing everything you can to represent them in the way that you think they should be represented. And so whether there was an increase in pressure, there's it's a bigger stage, and, I basically had one test and then I captained at a World Cup. So it was sort of like, and that's the biggest stage that you can have for rugby, for international, or for any rugby really currently, is the World Cup. So, that was an interesting experience, but it certainly felt a lot of pressure around that. Probably because it was also in New Zealand and we'd just beat, so there was a lot of spotlight on us and a lot of expectation that this could be it, we could win it for the first time since '99, and there was sort of like, we've beaten the All Blacks, they were like the favourites, and like, oh, we've just beaten them, we can do it again, and so it was there was a bit of whether pressure's the wrong word, but probably expectation. You probably felt that expectation.
Yeah. And what did you learn from that whole World Cup experience and being, I guess, at the forefront in the captaincy? Was there some things that you took away that have helped your life now and even just helped you when you went back to playing Super Rugby?
Oh, I think it was important to sort of, I guess playing in New Zealand as an Aussie there was no sort of respite. in terms of, you walk down the street, everyone knew who you were, knew where you were, so there was no sort of escape. And I think that sort of pressure in itself became, not in a bad way, but it sort of made me realise, look, that you need to be able to get away from this because otherwise it's just not healthy. And not get away can mean just going and sitting somewhere where no one knows who you are or doing something that's not connected to football whatsoever. But I found that tournament that there was just no physical escape. You go down for a coffee shop and everyone's talking about rugby and you're just like, man, I just want to literally don't want to talk about rugby at all.
This was pre-Netflix as well. You couldn't switch
so it
off.
was sort of, and I think that was the getting that balance right was sort of reinforced me that was really important.
Yep.
And there is sort of a, and I just, even once it finished, we came third. We lost in the semi to New Zealand, who ended up winning it. And, we'd probably, emotionally spent ourselves in the week before, and I just sort of worked out that, that you got to be able to you can't be there all the time.
Yep.
And I think I saw that at the World Cup because we did have a couple of games where we dipped, and it was quite noticeable.
Yep. And so how do you look to manage that now? And especially, I guess, because you had a few injuries throughout the career as well. So what gave you, once again, you've captained the World Cup. What was the sort of drive after that, especially with a few injury setbacks and stuff?
Yeah, I mean, I've had I guess some quite big injuries. I guess it was that, for me, I guess it was sort of that internal motivation. Like I always wanted to prove people wrong in a way. Like anyone that told me I couldn't do something, it was just like, okay, I'm going to show you. Like, and that was sort of an internal driver and prove to people that anyone that doubted that you couldn't do it was probably one of my bigger drivers. Now, maybe that's not a healthy driver, but it was something that really got me going. As soon as someone said you couldn't do it or wouldn't do it or can't do it, it was like, okay, I'm going to show you, and sort of just sit and be dogged at it and drive and work harder. And look, I coming back from some big injuries, some of them where there were certainly moments where it was, the conversation was like, well, I don't know if you'll get back from this.
Yep.
And that to me, that's not great words to hear when you sort of feel that you've got a lot left in you. And so that was always a driver for me to sort of get going. But also I love competing. I love the game the match day. That sort of really got me. The feeling of the opportunity to win and the buzz you got when you did win, that I really missed that when I was injured. And that's what was probably always been my driver. It was like that feeling of success as a group on that one moment. That was always the thing that used to get me out of bed in the morning, at 5 a.m. when you could hardly walk because you're injured and you got going to training. That was sort of the thing that got me going. It's like I wanted to feel that feeling again, and that was just an intrinsic thing. It was never sort of external. It was always just like in my head. It was just like, that's what I want to get to. And you just sort of, as I said, quite dogged about it. But when you're injured, you had to be.
And what was the longest stint you had out of the game because of injury, mate?
13 months, I think. So I did. Yeah, my knee took just under 12 months, and then hamstring was probably 11.
Was that when you fully?
Yeah. So that was probably that was 2012. So that was probably just under 12 months. So probably both a year technically.
Yeah, and obviously taking a year out of anything that you love's a tough thing. Did you find you had any head battles when you were going through all that sort of stuff, or did you find you were sort of able to pivot and do other things?
Certainly, definitely. Like, yes, I think I was quite adamant of sort of in not, involving yourself in other parts. So when I did my knee, I made it like a point that I'd get involved in the outside part of the business, take a lot of load off the team off the field where I could. So, engagements and going to lunches and speaking gigs and things like this, and sponsorship things where there was a big expectation of players around then to do a lot. So I was like, okay, well, let me take that stress away from a lot of the guys, and I'll do that. So, I'd do my training and I'd go you go to 4 or 5 events a week, different things. Like it was just, sitting in on meetings, be that sort of player conduit to the staff, and that I just found keeping myself busy was really important. And the same with when, my hamstring, when I was out for a long time, I tried to be as active as I could away from the pitch, because you can't really help the guys on the pitch. You're not going to sit there and you help, where, whether it was analysis, whether it was with the board, speaking to the board, or speaking to where the team's going, or how can you help with sponsors and so forth. So that was I was quite active in that sense.
That's awesome. It's good to see that. I never really thought that people got involved outside of that. That's brilliant that you do that. It's interesting. So then making the decision to leave the Reds, how was that? Obviously a club you grew up loving, and a club that you're also so proud to play for. How was that decision for you to?
Look, it was always going to be a hard one, but it was something that I guess I think when I started playing rugby, and one of the big things, that my parents always used to say, rugby's an international game. You play AFL, it is played in this country. You can't really travel, and something that was always sold to me was, rugby you can play anywhere in the world. It's sort of something that's it's a global game. And I'd always, when I wanted to make a career of it, I'd always said to myself, I want to play overseas at some point. I think I'd regret finishing my career and not have spent time playing abroad. Now where that was, I didn't know, and the game grew in different areas. And luckily enough, my mum's English, so I've got a British passport. So
makes it easy to get.
Made life a little bit easy to sort of get into the UK. You don't need visas, don't need anything. You can just go. You're basically treated like a local, and it made you a little bit more attractive to teams, because they didn't have to sort of worry about visa processes and so forth. So I guess for me, leaving the Reds was hard, but it was always something in my head that was like, I need to do. I will regret if I stay here and play my whole career at the Reds. I will regret sitting here now when I'm not playing, going, I wish I played overseas, because it was, and that sort of pulling the Band-Aid off was hard. But once I got away and got there, I loved it. It was genuinely one of the best decisions I've ever made.
Yeah, what do you feel that was? Was it like
I think it was just sort of, the change was really good. I'd been at the Reds since basically 2002, in a sense of from the academy, the end of 2002 through to 2015. So that's 13 years of driving to the same place, being at the same training venue, training in the same gym. And I, in my head, could never play against the Reds. That was just sort of in my, I still feel, I just don't think I could do it. But I just thought going away in a different city, there was just sort of, I guess, maybe a weight off your shoulders of this is all brand new to you. And as I say, something that changes is as good as a holiday sometimes. And it was just such, luckily enough, Harlequins are based in southwest London. So London's like a tough city not to enjoy. Obviously my wife and I went. My wife had always wanted to travel with her work, and she'd put that on hold because of our relationship. She didn't, she'd always wanted to live overseas and work in a different city, and she'd sort of put that on hold to allow me to sort of play. So there was an element of that's why we chose London as a club, one of the main reasons, so that she could experience it as well, and tick something off her bucket list that she'd always wanted to do. And it was just a great time. It was a great club. It was such a change. It was just so different. The culture was different. While we both speak the same language, the club and the rugby club was similar. There was just a lot of different things. It was a bit more old school in the sense it wasn't sort of bigger clubs. You'd bust everywhere. It was, you never were away for very long. You're always at home. I think that year before we left, I think I'd spent, between June and December of 2014, I think I spent 12 days in my own bed. So just because you always leave camps in Sydney and you were just never at home. So, luckily, or not luckily, it was just my wife and I at that point. There was no kids on, which would have been, incredibly tough if you got kids and so forth. So it was just nice to be able to sort of be home all the time as well. Sort of you sort of realise you got all this extra time to do stuff, which was nice.
And from that, what was that sort of point where you started thinking about life after footy? Because it seems to be something that I know I didn't think about it, and a lot of people don't think about what that transition's going to be like. Had you been thinking about it prior to going to the UK? Or
yes, I think it was sort of something that's always in the back of your head, but never. You'd always sort of like. It's weird. You'd almost go like I'm a while off that. Put it back. But it would always come forward. And even looking back now, I should have done more. I feel I should have done more earlier, even though I did a fair bit. But I feel, and I guess that's a point. There's maybe, but then there's also I don't know if you're ever fully prepared for it. Like I mean, you can be as prepared as you think you are. I don't know. And look, I was lucky. I made the choice to retire. I wasn't forced to retire.
Yep.
I had a year to run on my contract. It was my decision. I made the decision because for other reasons. But that even then it was difficult.
Yep.
So, I mean, you try and get yourself as prepared as possible, but I don't know if there's ever an actual point where you are, it's never not going to be hard. I think is probably the way to put it forward. But I feel I should have done more. Even though I did, I was lucky enough to do a fair bit and got a degree and so forth, and do a lot of other stuff. But it was it was difficult.
What do you feel like you would have done differently or could have done more of? It's obviously you're extremely busy, but
I think consciously exposing yourself to different things, because you sort of get to a point where you don't know what you want to do, and if I'm honest now, I still don't know what I want to do.
When we grow up, we'll figure it out.
Yeah, but exactly. But I think the more you can expose yourself to different environments and opportunities, you can sort of, almost tick it off the list. It's like go sit in finance and go work for, with someone on the stock market and go, actually, no, I don't want to do that. That's not fun. Go sit in a bank and go, actually, I don't want to do that. That's not fun. And look, I think you probably can leverage your contacts a little bit more when you are playing. As I said, your sponsors, we were sponsored by St. George. So if I had gone, hey, can I come and sit with the head of your bank and just sit around and see what you do for the day? A couple of days a week, do it for a month and go, thanks. And then move on to, find another sponsor and go, hey, do I want to go into engineering and sit and go, with an engineer, whoever it is, or mining or whatever it is, to work out, to almost tick off what you don't like.
Yep.
And I think the hard thing is you're never going to compare it. Like, it's never going to be what your sport was. And I think you need to come to that realization.
Yep.
It can be, and it can be close, but there is an element that, you're playing. Well, for me, I was playing the game for the love of it. I never played for money. Wasn't a driver for me. And so it was never like, oh, well, I'm going to go and play for, do this for money. It was like, I would play and do what I did for the love of it, and I was just lucky enough to get paid to do it.
Yep.
And paid very well. I'm not denying that you didn't sort of make the most of it, but if everyone didn't get paid, I'd probably still try and do the same thing.
Yeah.
And that's
probably what makes you successful at it and a great leader as well.
Well, I don't know. I think it probably makes it not feel like a job. It certainly never felt like that's the way. It was never felt like a job to me. It was never like, okay, I have to do this because it's my job. It was like, I want to do this because I want to win. I want to be successful. I want to achieve in it. But it was never sort of looked at as like, I'm clocking in here because I need to do, this is what I'm paid to do, so I better go out there and do it.
It's everything you just said is, I think, resonates with a lot of people, because there's, you always hear about the midlife crisis for a lot of people, and there's so many men that I talk to that are in a place in their careers where they're feeling stuck and they haven't, as you said, tried all these different things, because they might have gone straight to university or got a trade and just stayed there and didn't really explore other things for a number of reasons. But now they're in a point, they're like, I want something different. I just don't know what to do. And I think athletes are forced to have to. You have to reckon with that at some point, because your career, there's a time on it. And I think for people out there in all industries, like, there's that same opportunity. It's not always a comfortable decision, as you said, but you can find a new career and something that you enjoy as well. And it might not be the right thing straight up, but
and I think it's I guess as you said, that athletes, particularly rugby players, golfers, they can play a bit longer, but there is an end point. Unfortunately, whether you give it up, your body gives it up, or you just stop getting picked. I mean, there's an end point, and that point will come at some point. And so I guess for you, it's sort of almost like, for us, it's like ripping the Band-Aid off compared to the slow sort of, it's like you're going to have to change and you've got to have to adapt, and it's not easy, and it certainly hasn't been easy, for me, even though, I felt I was fairly well prepared, but it's still it's not a straight path. It's sort of, it has its ups and downs, and
Is there anything you do different in that transition out? Because you went to Cambridge after, which is unbelievable. That's unreal.
Yeah, so I was lucky enough to get accepted to do a MBA at Cambridge University. So when I finished playing in the UK, so I spent just under 2 years doing that. I loved that. COVID got in the way a little bit.
Dampened it a bit.
So the whole experience of living in a college town, going to university, sort of reliving what the uni days that I didn't probably get when I was an 18, 19-year-old.
You're doing it at 30.
Doing it at 35 with a kid. And, so it's probably not the same experience, but it sort of allowed me to have that sort of little bit of, what college and university could have been like. But, yeah, look, I think, would I do anything different? I don't know. I don't think you know unless you do it. I was lucky enough to get through that. Obviously, COVID and the world sort of changed a little bit. We were living in the UK. And probably had intentions to stay in the UK for a period of time. But with COVID and, the distance from the family and, wife was at the time, we were pregnant with our second daughter. We just felt that being close to the family was right. So that put another curveball in it. I think when we finished rugby, it was always like, do the MBA. Let's see if I can spend a couple of years working in London doing sort of like ticking that box of okay, this might be a bit of fun, working in the big city, find it, working, using leverage the opportunity from the MBA, and that was the plan. Out of finishing rugby, do the MBA, get a job somewhere, work there for a couple of years, and see if we like that, and then see where the world takes us. We didn't sort of have a plan. That was sort of the general, and that COVID put a big spanner in the works. It's still at the start we're like, no, we're going to stay, and then sort of got to Christmas 2020, where we were in our third sort of heavy lockdown in the UK. Couldn't leave the house for more than 30 minutes a day. It was black at 3 p.m. Bright at 9 a.m. It was sort of
that's a small window.
Pretty bleak, and it was just like you couldn't go out. Everyone was getting COVID. Didn't look like anyone could travel anywhere anytime soon. And, wife was pregnant. We knew we were set, and we're like, this is going to be so hard to do this without any family support. And so we that was the time, sort of December 20 and January 21, we sort of made the decision to come home.
Yeah. And do you think you'll ever go back overseas or?
I'd love to. I think where, with two kids, it's a little bit, two kids, and my wife's pregnant again, so we got
congratulations, mate.
So another one on the way, due in late October. So
nice.
With three kids is adds an extra level of complexity to it. I think we'd both love to go back over and finish what we started in a sense, but when that is, I'm not sure. But we're very lucky here. We got both sets of parents. We've got a very supportive family network and a lot of good friends, and it's a tough place to beat Brisbane bringing up kids. It's a lifestyle that I was very lucky to enjoy as a kid, and you sort of want your kids to experience the same thing. It's much more sort of outdoors and a lot more activities that they do compared to what we were doing in the UK. But most of that was under COVID, where you can only spend 30 minutes a day. It's a different vibe.
Yeah, lovely. And I've got one last question for you, which I always don't prepare people for and just ask, so don't sweat. But what's your definition of being a man? Like, what does that mean to you, especially coming from the rugby?
I think definition of being a man is being good to, doing the right thing that you feel is right by the people that are important to you. For me, it's my family. So, that's being loyal to them and committed to what you say you're going to do. And I think that for me is always something that I've tried to do is, if you say you're going to do something, do it and be loyal to it. Don't sort of, try and do anything else. It's like just be committed to it, and even if it doesn't work, at least you sort of gave it your best shot.
Yeah, love that. James, appreciate you coming on, mate. It's been a pleasure.
No, I enjoyed it.
Thanks for tuning in. And remember, if you got value from this episode, please share it with your mates. Leave a review. It all helps the show grow and gets into the hands of blokes that can gain value from it. And remember, leave you with this. Do something today that's going to make you better for tomorrow. Thank you for listening to the Man That Can Project podcast. My name is Lachlan Stuart, and I hope you enjoyed this episode and found it helpful. If you did, please take a moment to rate and review the Man That Can Project on your favorite podcast platform. And don't forget to subscribe to stay up to date with our newest episodes. We'll see you again next time.